Yo, what's up YouTube family? It's your boy Koozie back at you with another hot TikTok reaction video. Y'all don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's get it.
This is Aerogel, the world's lightest solid material made up of 99% air. Aerogel is 150 times stronger than steel but lighter than air. It's so lightweight that you won't even feel its weight when placed on a scale. The weight of 1 cubic centimeter of aerogel is only 0.201 grams. This material can transform seawater into drinkable water, withstand temperatures up to 800 degrees Celsius, making it ideal for use in rockets by ISRO and NASA. While eco-friendly, aerogel is quite expensive, with a kilogram costing around $90,000. However, future mass production may reduce its price.
Man, that seems impossible.
This right here gives me superpowers. It let me build real silent Black Panther shoes, just like in the movie. Regular shoes are too noisy. So to make silent shoes, I needed a material that would absorb the sound of me walking. I tried foam, sound panels, leather, rock wool, a bunch of other stuff too. But then I found aerogel. It's 99% air and is created by evaporating off liquid inside gel. So you're left with just its structure. The result is a low density material with extremely low sound conductivity. Basically block all sound, which is perfect for these silent shoes. And researchers in Singapore have made flexible aerogel sheets. It's super spongy thanks to the aerogel nanocrystals inside, which you can see here. I slipped them into the sole of the shoe and you'll never hear me coming. Oh, and did I mention I made them retractable?
Boy, that's next level tech for sure.
This bag, made of 99% air and 1% glass, has been debuted by Coperni at Paris Fashion Week. It uses NASA's silica aerogel, the lightest solid on planet Earth. And amazingly, it can somehow hold items as heavy as your iPhone.
It's fancy. I know that was expensive, man. How many of you have ever heard of aerogel, man, before this video? Me personally, I haven't. That is crazy. It has to be some type of alien technology or something, man, because it is crazy how strong it is. It's flame resistant, how light it is. Think about this. It's almost invisible until you put it next to a dark surface. That's wild. Okay.
You have to see this. What you're about to witness is the lightest solid material known to mankind. My own brother is unboxing a little bit of what is called aerogel, and this is made up of 99.9% air. They take molecules, extract the water, replace it with gas, and this is what you get. Now check this. NASA uses this to capture materials on the back end of comet tails so they can analyze it later. But it actually has the best insulating capability to any other material known on Earth. And also, per gram per ounce, this is worth and priced higher than gold. Can you believe it? A valuable substance with great utility. Let me know. Pretty cool translucent stuff, but would you purchase it as an investment store of value?
It's literally like a piece of cloud, man. It's invisible. Do you see this? It's crazy. It's like a piece of blur. Like, literally, that's wild. Never seen this, never heard of it. It's amazing.
Many people know that aerogel is extremely light, but another unique property is that it's hydrophobic, which means it repels water. Watch this.
what type of installation I'm gonna be using in my house pretty soon.
All I'm offering is the truth.
In debt, your payments past due. Your life just races past you. Wake up, the Matrix has you. Wake up, the Matrix has you. We are enslaved like cattle, held back with chains and shackles. Wake up, the Matrix has you. Wake up, the Matrix has you.
Crazy.
I got a cool thing to show you. It's in this tube. Ooh. Ha. Can barely see it, can you? It's called Aerogel. It was pioneered by NASA back at the dawn of the space shuttle era, and it is the lightest solid substance ever devised. It is the closest thing we've ever come to a ghost. It is solid. You can hear me touch it. Oops, I broke it. This stuff has remarkable properties. Heat has a very hard time getting from one side of it to the other. Not only that, if it does get hot, it immediately cools. I could take a blowtorch to this, have it glow red hot. In the time it takes me to put the blowtorch down and come back to it, it's at room temperature. So NASA realized this would make ideal heat tiles for any spacecraft re-entering, such as the space shuttle. It's made of a long polymer chains that initially they're sort of in a liquid, but then you evaporate the liquid that would otherwise contain it, and you're left with just the molecular strands. And they're completely intertwined. And so there it is. And so I have a whole container of it here, because that's how I roll. And there it is. It's a ghost. Some of my favorite stuff out there.
Have y'all ever heard of sky ice? And if you have, do you think this could be another form of it, or could this be sky ice period? Because you know they say it's different forms of it and it's made out of different materials. But then again, you know what, since I said that, I have to take that back. But then again, they might be trying to make a form of sky ice out of different materials. Let's just say it like that. But let me know what you think down below in the comment section.
Unbelievable. The inventor of Aerogel is truly a genius. As the lightest solid material in the world, Aerogel is composed of 99% air, making its density extremely low, even lighter than cotton and feathers. Visually, it looks like a puff of smoke, so light that it won't even crush a dandelion. Hence, it is also known as solid smoke. The internal structure of Aerogel is extremely loose, with more than 80% being air, giving it a density that is only 1,000th that of glass, and making it 150 times stronger than steel. Even at high temperatures of 1200 degrees Celsius, Aerogel remains heat resistant. Infrared observations show that high temperatures cannot penetrate Aerogel, almost completely insulating heat transfer. This material is not only light and heat insulating, but also incredibly strong, able to withstand 1,000 times its own weight. Even when crushed into powder, Aerogel can be applied to hands to become waterproof gloves. What fields do you think it could be used in?
You know, they should use those for firefighter uniforms, bulletproof vests for maybe officers or army, you know, vets, or not vets, but army officers and stuff like that. People that are in the army and the Marines. And probably wetsuits for people who do dives and stuff like that, since it's waterproof too. Man, that's crazy. That's a good idea.
You know, there's an alien intelligence that knows all, 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 knows all.
Alien technology.
Dynamic. Dynamic.
slow like a cloud of smoke.
Ah, allez, on est prêt.
Voilà, comme ça, vous allez voir.
Wow.
This bag is made of 99% of air. They also call it nothing because it's anti-material, and 1% of glass to hold the shape.
The name of this material is Aerogel. NASA used it for in the satellite, in the space, to catch the stardust, and yeah, that's great.
Le sac, il est fait en Grèce, à Athènes. Le logo, il est fait à Limassol, en Chypre. Oui.
We just discovered for the first time the aerogel bag, the air swipe bag, which is unbelievable. We've done a lot of research and development for many projects, but this one is beyond. It's like a cloud. I mean, we had this reference picture, which is a bit of aerogel material, which flies, and we're so curious to understand how it worked. And Sebastian is a geek. He always search on Google plenty of innovation and materials, and we contacted this engineer, and we've been working on it for many months, during 3 months. C'est le sac le plus léger au monde.
35 grammes.
Wow.
Comme c'est de la nanomatière,
Ouais.
et il arrête les lasers, c'est un laser pointer. C'est comme du frozen smoke. En NASA, il appelle la fumée gelée.
La fumée gelée.
The bag is 30 grams, and it can hold, I think, 4,000 times its weight,
Yeah.
probably like 12 kilos or something like that.
De face.
Pile de face, ouais. Alors on voit pas trop que c'est du aérogel de travers pour qu'on capte les petites transparences. Là c'est bon.
It's the first time that they create such a big object made of aerogel. This was very challenging to recreate the shape of the swipe bag, and to make that amount of material in aerogel was really challenging. He broke so many, probably, I don't know, 30, 50, until he found the perfect one. So this material was created in 1937, and I have a bit here, and it's unbelievable. It's like, and it changed the color. It's so poetical. It's crazy. Each season we try to push innovation forward, and we try to do our classic iconic swipe bag into different materials. So we have done a meteorite bag, pure gold bag, glass bag, disc lamp, yeah. And this one is probably the most, yeah.
Well, you've really topped it this time, no?
Yeah, thank you.
Will it be available on order?
Maybe.
Probably.
Let's see.
We're gonna work on it.
It's for fashion history.
Yeah.
Like this, I just took a random piece of metal that I had lying around, and I hammered it into the rough shape that I wanted. I then used an angle grinder to shape it even more, and I finished it up on a grinding wheel. This was the final result, and it wasn't perfect, but it was honestly way better than I thought it would be. At this point, the chamber and everything about it was finally and totally done, and the gels were done as well. I had finished cycling them all in the methanol, and I was ready to turn them into aerogel. So, I started by filling the chamber with 45 mils of methanol, and I pulled out one of the gels. I then carefully lowered it in, and I made sure that there was enough methanol to completely cover it. I wiped down all the threads to get rid of any methanol that might have been there, and I screwed on the window. Like before, I first did this as tight as I could with my fingers, and then I really cranked it down. I then carefully carried the whole thing back to the stand, and I attached the CO2 hosing. I also taped the camera to the window to film inside. When I first tried this, I used a phone, because I assumed that a camera wouldn't be able to focus that close. However, the camera and lens that I was using apparently didn't have any problem. I then opened the main tank, and I carefully turned the valve so the liquid CO2 would only trickle in. The goal here was to fill it really slowly over the course of about an hour. I was hoping that I'd be able to see the gel in the chamber, but it was unfortunately just barely out of view. I kind of expected that though, because the gel was so low down, and the windows were mostly just to help keep track of the liquid CO2. For this whole supercritical drying part, I found it very hard to find a decent procedure. There didn't seem to be a lot of info available, and I was only able to find a few complete ones. The one on aerogel.org was quite good, but I wasn't sure about the quality of their final aerogel. From the photos, it all definitely worked, but they looked like they had a lot of cracks, and I ideally wanted mine to be crack-free. So what I ended up doing was combining their procedure with another one that I found, and I also injected some of my own ideas. One of the biggest factors when it came to making crack-free aerogel seemed to be speed, where slower was almost always better. This was the main reason why I was adding the liquid CO2 over the course of an hour. If I added it too quickly and it mixed too much with the methanol, it could create stresses at the surface of the gel, which could cause it to crack. When it was barely over halfway full, the liquid CO2 usually stopped coming in, and to get more, I had to open this valve on the right. Doing this let some of the CO2 gas out of the chamber and lowered the pressure, and it let more liquid CO2 come in from the tank. I only opened it a very small amount, and when the chamber was eventually full, I closed it again. Then, I let it sit like this for 30 minutes. It can be a bit hard to tell here, but there are two layers where the liquid CO2 is sitting on top of the methanol. To make it more clear, I went ahead and shook it a bit, but this probably wasn't the best for the gel. For the most part, besides when I shook things, these two solvents were completely separated, and they were only slowly mixing together. It wasn't enough for them to just blend together, but a small amount of each of them was dissolving into the other. This meant that the gel was only slowly getting introduced to the CO2, which again was a good thing. When I came back 30 minutes later, they'd clearly mixed quite a bit, and the methanol layer had expanded. It was always kind of hard to tell exactly where the methanol was, but it had clearly shifted up, and the light was getting warped in a different place. They were still mostly separated though, and because methanol was more dense, it was sitting at the bottom. This was convenient because the next step was to drain it, and it meant that all I had to do was open the valve at the bottom of the chamber. This again had to be done really slowly, and the target was to do it in about 2.5 hours. When I stopped seeing methanol dripping out, the CO2 in the chamber was just above the gel, and I closed the valve. When I was done, I checked how much methanol I had, and it was about 40 mils. I started with 45 mils though, so there was still some methanol mixed in with the CO2 in the chamber. Some of the methanol also probably got vaporized as it came out, and just went into the air. So for this reason, it was really important to do this in a well-ventilated area to avoid breathing in a bunch of methanol. I refilled it, again slowly, over the course of about 30 minutes, and I brought it up above the window. Then after that, I let it sit overnight, and I waited for the methanol that was still in the gel to slowly get swapped for the CO2. When I came back the next day, it looked pretty much the same, and I opened the valve at the bottom. I collected everything, but this time, it was mostly CO2. I was getting mostly dry ice, which was forming as the liquid CO2 was leaving the valve. Under normal atmospheric pressure,
This is the most terrifying water in the world, dry water. By completely immersing a mobile phone in dry water, the phone can still function normally. Even if you fill a computer case with dry water, it can still work properly. Dipping your hand into boiling dry water causes no harm. This is because dry water has a boiling point of only 45 degrees Celsius, making it highly volatile, and a small bottle costs $138. You can even use it as a dumbbell. It has a high density, with a small bottle weighing 15 keys. When you immerse a piece of paper with writing on it, you can see that the water easily dissolves the writing, but dry water does not affect it. Due to its high fluorination level, the carbon in dry water cannot be oxidized, and water vapor does not affect flames. The weight of dry water vapor is several times that of air, so the smoke from extinguished matches can flow and form real clouds. Pour it on a burning side of a candle, and all the candles will be extinguished because oxygen is pushed away by the vapor of dry water, thus putting out the candles. Due to the unique properties of dry water, all substances have difficulty mixing with it. Tea bags that dissolve in water perform poorly in dry water, and even alcohol cannot mix with it.
I wonder if this is the same water that they use to make dry ice, man. If it is, that's wild. I never heard of dry water, but I hope y'all ain't out here trying to drink that, man. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think it's going to do nothing for you, not what you think it's going to do for you. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section. Dry water. Man, that's crazy.
Aerogel.
Aerogels are a class of materials that can be made out of pretty much anything. Like sculptures can be made out of stone or clay. And very similarly, aerogels can be made out of these different raw materials.
Which opens the door to nearly limitless possibilities. Aerogels are almost completely made out of air, and are considered one of the lightest solid materials ever known. The most popular type of aerogel is silica-based.
Silica aerogels have been used by NASA in the Stardust mission. NASA utilized this material because it was lightweight and also had a porous structure such that they can capture this space dust material.
Silica aerogels have also been used as insulation on NASA's Mars rovers and are even being used as insulation for thinner, warmer outerwear here on Earth. This material tends to get the most attention, and sometimes gets mistaken as the one and only aerogel. But aerogels can also be made out of metals, polymers, and of course, graphene. Which brings us to the X-Lab.
In the X-Lab, the Extreme Environment Microsystems Laboratory, we make tiny but tough electronics and materials.
Like graphene aerogel, which has the super strength and electrical conductivity of graphene in the form of a light aerogel.
There's two main steps in creating graphene aerogel. The first is to create the graphene hydrogel. So you start with graphene oxide flakes and you disperse those in an aqueous solution. And then once you have your graphene oxide dispersion, you can load that into a furnace and heat that to about 200 degrees Celsius, and that will form your hydrogel. So it's exactly like making Jell-O, where you put in the powder and then you add the hot water and you let it cool and you have a Jell-O. And so a hydrogel is the graphene Jell-O. And then the second part is taking away the liquid from that and leaving just air in the structure.
Making a graphene aerogel is special because of its two-dimensional nature. And so making a graphene aerogel allows us to study the way two-dimensional flakes or sheet interact with each other when we bind them together.
And the atomic structure of a material determines its different properties. Which is why, despite the fact that diamonds, pencil lead, and graphene are all made entirely out of carbon, they each have very different characteristics. And then there's gravity. Scientists are eager to solve the mystery of how the structure of graphene aerogels will behave in microgravity. To find out, Debbie's team is preparing to send a payload to the ISS with all the necessary components to make graphene aerogel in space, basically using the same two-step process outlined earlier.
The first step, making the hydrogel, is actually the one we're interested in for the space station. When you're dealing with liquid to solid phase transitions, there is concerns you have to worry about, especially with dispersions, like with the powder, because gravity is going to pull those down, and that creates anisotropic, unevenly distributed graphene hydrogel, which then gives you an unevenly distributed graphene aerogel. And that in turn affects the properties. So you could have, with that, less electrical conductivity, lower absorption.
The International Space Station is, of course, in outer space, so gravity's effects are minimized.
The flakes are free to float around homogeneously, and when we perform the reduction step in the furnace on the space station, that will give us a more uniform macrostructure.
Synthesizing graphene aerogels in a microgravity environment is really exciting because it can potentially advance many of our engineering applications, such as the development of batteries, the development of thermally insulating materials, and also sensor materials. We are currently about 1 year into the project, and so we are hoping, fingers crossed, to launch our payload within the next year. Once we get the payload back, we hope to learn, number one, what is the mesostructure of a microgravity synthesized aerogel? So structurally, what does it look like? Is it different from an Earth-based material? We plan on measuring the mechanical properties, the thermal properties, and the electrical properties of the aerogels and compare the Earth-based properties to the microgravity-based properties.
Equipped with this knowledge, if researchers can crack how to manufacture graphene aerogels in microgravity, then the way we explore space could change completely.
The idea is to take raw materials, bring it up to the space environment, build what you need, and then deploy it from space. So that's kind of the big vision there.
While we're not at that point yet, this graphene aerogel experiment is moving us towards that possible future.
So I think some of the first demonstrations and first validations of our work could happen within the next 5 to 10 years.
The thought that a new era of material science is just around the corner, which could in turn herald a new era of human space exploration, is a thrilling concept for Debbie and Jessica.
It's just cool. It's the new frontier, I guess. It's just unexplored. It's the future.
Ooh. Aerogel. Aerogel. I ain't gonna say aerogel. Aerogel. That's some magnificent material, man. I really think it's some alien technology, but I mean, they showed us, you know, part of the process how to make it, which is crazy long at that, man. But that's wild, man. This is definitely gonna be a material of the future, man. They said that they use it to collect stardust, but maybe this part of the firmament, you know. Because we all know they can't go out of space. Well, space is what the space is in what they tell us, you know. But hey, who knows, man? This aerogel is something serious, man. I ain't gonna lie. But if y'all liking the video so far, don't forget to hit that like button and like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're new to the channel. You know what I'm saying? It's all love. It's all love.
Here's a science story from Interesting Engineering that I'm not sure if I believe or not. A scientist claims to have invented a new aerogel that hits 104% solar reflectivity and boosts super radiative cooling, which I was very confused about. I'm not sure how you get above 100% reflectivity, meaning you're reflecting more light than actually hit the surface to begin with. And the scientist says that it achieved this in the visible region, which is obtained by the photoluminescence effect, which I'm not super up to date on. I'll just say that it does sound confusing, but let's talk about what was invented. This is a representative image of the subject matter. The aerogel in particular will look something like this as it's a manufactured material, but this comes from the Sichuan University in China, devised an aerogel composed of gelatin and DNA that beat this 100% solar reflectance. He says the reflectivity is obtained by testing with a post-spectrographic UV-Vis NIR device. And what he says is that the luminescence of aerogel originates from the tightly cross-linked network formed by the gelatin and the DNA, which allows the chromophores to come together and inhibit the non-radiative leaps of the system. Or in more simple terms, which thank God we have here, it has the ability to reflect a lot of sunlight due to its special layered design and unique way of glowing when exposed to the light. Though that still doesn't explain to me how we get above 100%. In my head, I'm thinking maybe what it's doing is converting some infrared or non-visible light into visible light, so we get more visible light reflected from the material, but still the total amount of energy that hits it is greater. That's what's making sense for me. They want to use this as a building material, which sounds great, especially because they're environmentally friendly. Aerogels typically are fabricated from biomass raw materials, in this case gelatin and DNA, which pollute a lot less. They're very recyclable, very biodegradable. And I think this is a cool thing if it works, even if he's fudging the numbers a little bit, and maybe it's not 104% reflective, which I still genuinely don't understand. It's still going to perform very well, and if you can make this at cost, it can help keep a lot of homes really cool.
Same, man. I'm kind of like him. Like, how the hell did you get it past 100%, man? Come on, man. 100% pure? Over 100% pure? Man, it sounds like it's some fishy business going on, man. What's really happening, man? Let me know what you think about that. But that is some cool stuff, man. That, like I was saying, man, this material is amazing. It's amazing.
So I somehow wound up on conspiracy TikTok yesterday, and this video that I came across, which I would stitch, but he had his stitches turned off. He was saying that
basically aerogel is the firmament, whatever that is supposed to mean, I don't know. And he was trying to say that Elon Musk's rocket that failed to like launch or whatever earlier last week hit that material in the sky, and that's why it like crashed and blew up. And I just the lengths that people will go through to make up these wild, conspiracies rather than look at evidence. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how you went from aerogel to using it as evidence that the Earth is flat. I don't understand. Somebody help me out.
Now known as the Skystone, according to analysis, an amazing 77.17% of the stone is somehow made of pure oxygen. The remaining percentage was divided between carbon, calcium, and another unknown element. When researchers crushed a piece of the skyrock and mixed it with acetone, hexane, and methylene, and then enhanced the extractions with ultrasound, they were eventually able to locate an organic compound that is currently unknown to science. Just what is the Skystone? How could it possibly be made mostly of oxygen?
This is aerogel, the world's lightest, that is least dense solid. This piece has a mass of just 1.22 grams. That is only a few times the mass of the same volume of air, which kind of makes sense because it is 99.8% air. In fact, some aerogels are so light that if you removed all the air from them, they would be less dense than air. So now let's try the aerogel. It is getting pretty hot, as you can see through the thermal camera. But coming up on 3 minutes, there's still no sign of melted chocolate. So we're going to pull out a thermocouple and just check the temperature underneath the bunny, like underneath the aerogel, and see what the flame temperature is. You can kind of see that the parts of the bunny are getting hot, but it's not the bottom of the bunny, it's all the around the bunny.
Exactly. That convective heat is moving up and around the aerogel. So you can... It's not that it's hot, it's that it's brittle.
Elements that you'll ever find or hear about that nobody talks about. The reason why they can't really talk about it is because it's very hard for them to use it. It's a geopolymer, and only, like they say, like the elders of Kilimanjaro, only certain clans know how to preserve it to keep it, because it only can really last. If once you get a piece of it and you chilling with it, after a while, it will just eventually disappear, because it's actually made up of chip firmament, as the story goes. And what it is, it's very heavy, right? Like if you drop it, it sounds like a rock, like a heavy rock. But when you pick it up, it's dumb light. It's crazy light. But like if you throw it in the air, they say it kind of like comes down a little slower.
It almost felt like you could throw it up in the air and it would just float back down. But I didn't try that. It didn't melt into water. When it got warm, because we had it inside, it just started to shrink. It got smaller and smaller, but my glove never got wet. And there was no water on the floor. The stuff just turned into thin air when it got warm and vaporized.
They've been experimenting on how to preserve it even longer, but they don't really know how to do it, because after a certain time, like I said, it just disintegrates. It disappears. It evaporates.
If you look at aerogel on a light background, it's almost impossible to see because it is pretty transparent. But if you look at it on a dark background, then you can see that it has a slight bluish color. And it's bluish for the same reason that the sky is blue, because all those tiny little nanoscale structures, they scatter the light according to Rayleigh scattering. And the intensity of light scattered is proportional to 1 over wavelength to the power of 4, which means it scatters shorter wavelengths like blue much more than it scatters yellow or red. And for that reason, aerogel looks opaque in the ultraviolet and transparent in the infrared. Now, what do you think this would look like if I held it up to the blue sky? What do you think we would see? Would it look ultra blue? No, it looks yellow. And that's because the aerogel is actually scattering out that blue light, and so what passes through and makes it to our eyes is the longer wavelengths like the yellows and oranges. It's basically the same effect as looking at a sunset. When you see the yellows and oranges of a sunset, it's because the blue light has already been scattered out by the atmosphere the light had to pass through before it reached your eyes. So effectively, looking at aerogel against blue sky is like looking at a portable sunset. You might think that because aerogel is largely comprised of air, like 99% air, that it has the same thermal properties as air, but that is not correct. It's actually a better insulator than air is.
This is good for capturing particles, because if a particle like that were to hit a solid surface, then it just stops, immediately. My running jokes is when they build skyscrapers in Antarctica, they'll use aerogel as thermal insulation.
Why do you?
It's basically a testimony from a scientist that was on an expedition in Antarctica who was a witness to something known as the Antarctican sky ice. It's said to be sky ice that literally falls from the firmament.
Say that.
Well, because then they'll really care about how thermal efficient it is, because it'd be so cold there.
Right.
So instead of having, 10 feet of fiberglass insulation, you could have 6 inches or something of aerogel.
It's crazy, right? So allegedly, they got space up here. The waters above from the waters of the deep. So what they're doing allegedly is when they shoot rockets, if they could blast past this, then they could get into the upper waters and then bring the war to Allah itself.
Well, y'all, that's it.